A 7-mile fiber-optic tether just outsmarted layered Russian air defenses. Watch the 60-second blitz. 5 Shrike FPVs detach from a Mura V5. GPS spoofing scrambles Kasuka 4. Pantsir S1 chases a decoy, and 2 Shrikes knife the generator and radar. Then the gate breach. 700 pounds of high explosive into a depot holding up to 500 tons of rockets and shells. Stay to see how the initial strike triggered the chain reaction fireball that crippled local command. Before we move on, please take a moment to subscribe to the channel and like the video. If the depot was walled in by radar, jammers, and guards, why did a 7-mile wire unlock it? Because the Kinburn Spit rewards patience more than firepower. Control of that thin peninsula means you shape the approaches to Mykolaiv and reach into the Black Sea's shipping arteries. It's a logistics throat, and whoever holds it feeds or chokes operations from Odessa to the outer bays. That's why a mound of munitions sat behind fences with armored vehicles on call and consoles glowing through the night. On paper, the defenses looked tight. A Pantsir S1 tracked anything big enough to ping. Electronic warfare suites in the Kasuka class smeared radio links, and the perimeter rolled with overlapping patrols and fixed cameras. Any off-the-shelf quad would die crossing the line. So the plan didn't use the air. It used the air's quirks. Over several weeks, Ukrainian ISR logged weather at dawn and dusk, noting fog that pooled low and stubborn, and thermal inversions that turned the sky into a mirror for radar beams. When warm air sat over cool ground, radar energy bent and stacked, leaving shallow lobes and dead shelves close to the surface. Those shelves were the lanes. Timing came from people and power, not just clouds. Analysts mapped guard shift overlaps down to a few minutes when one squad handed off and the next hadn't settled. They watched generator telemetry by its telltale signature. A surge when floodlights cycled, a sag when a diesel warmed, a steady peak when the radar ran a calibration. Maintenance on the array hit at roughly the same slice of the week. Stack the human lull on the mechanical lull and a window opened. It wasn't long. About a minute. None of that mattered if control broke inside the jamming bubble. That is where the wire mattered. The drone's tether was fiber optic, hair-thin, immune to radio spoofing, and deaf to GPS denial. Control signals and video rode a glass thread, not the airwaves. The EW towers could scream, but the line ignored it. With guidance locked by a physical link, the operator could thread the drone through the inversion's radar shelves, while the consoles saw noise, ghosts, and a smeared blob that didn't behave. Think of the depot like a safe with layered locks. The patrols and cameras are the heavy steel door. The Pantsir is the hardened dial. The EW suite is the alarm panel that calls the guard tower when you touch anything. Fog becomes the dimmed lights in the room. The fiber optic link is the master key that bypasses the panel. You're not breaking the door. You're walking past the tripwires without triggering them, because the wire doesn't talk to the alarm at all. United 24 flagged a joint Navy and SBU action in the Kinburn area against an ammunition site, which is the thread that ties this together. The prep cycle explains how the strike team made a Fortress Act blind without hacking a single antenna. They waited for a morning when fog pooled to knee height and the temperature profile bent radar just enough. They aligned it with a generator load transition and a scheduled radar check. Then they chose a tool that didn't need the spectrum at all. The mini payoff is simple. Blind spots weren't gaps in the wall. They were timed patterns that stacked like gears. Weather created cover at the surface. Fiber optic control erased the EW threat. Human routines carved out 60 seconds when inputs dropped and decisions lagged. With the door cracked, the next problem wasn't sensors anymore. It was motion. How to move across a defended yard, under cameras and past restless crews, without the guard tower catching the approach before the wire finished paying out. 5 FPVs slip off the ghost taxi. Could EW operators tell which blip mattered when GPS data turned into noise? That was the first test. The second was whether anyone would notice the wire. The Mura V5 nosed past the outer berm under a low lid of fog, paying out a hair-thin fiber line behind it. At a safe standoff, the Shrike separated and fanned into lanes drawn during weeks of logging fog layers and dead shelves in the radar. Each carried a task, a route, and a timer synced to that narrow 1-minute window when the guard shift blurred and the generator nodded. Inside the Kasuka 4 shelter, the screens didn't agree. Spoofed signals smeared coordinates into drift, so targets hopped in place, then split, then recombined like a bad replay. The Pantsir crews did what training said, lock the largest return. The Mura V5 obliged with a bigger radar cross-section and a steady bearing, so barrels swung and search radars wound up. What the crew didn't see was that the control feed to the strike team moved at light speed through glass, not air. The jamming field roared. The line ignored it. Decoys fed a retreat pattern, echoing the ghost taxi's signature rolling away toward the dunes. The real threats went the other direction and dipped under the radar lobe stacked by the inversion, low enough to ride the quiet shelf near the ground. On the perimeter cams, lights washed out in the fog. On the scopes, a fat target pulled eyes and fire. That bought seconds. Not many, but enough for the Shrikes to tighten their needles on 2 points that mattered more than any patrol truck. 2 broke to the east corner, where the generator hummed through its own cables and the radar mast kept watch over the yard. The choice was simple math. Kill, power, and blind the searchlight, and every other defender loses tools at once. The first Shrike skimmed a trench line, then cut across a stack of pallets, buzzing up into the generator housing. It hit high on the casing. The light stuttered and went black. The second Shrike speared the radar array. The dish shivered, then slumped, and the system went dead. No track, no guidance, just a husk. The rest sprinted. Low altitude. Short bursts on the motors to stay under acoustic cues and keep the fiber from snagging. Control stayed smooth through the bubble because the link didn't care about the spectrum. Decoy telemetry kept telling the wrong story, painting a chase toward the shoreline while the real attack ran straight at the hard face of the depot. At the gate, the Mura V5 didn't loft or airburst. It drove. The reinforced panels took the hit first, then the nose pushed 700 pounds of high explosive tight against the concrete frame. The blast traded air for pressure. Walls shed flakes of concrete, spall at rifle speeds, slicing through anything behind them. The pressure front, thousands of pounds per square inch in the first instant, surged through bays and corridors, cracking doors, collapsing false ceilings, and punching into storage cells like a giant fist. Then the real effect surfaced. Stacks of Grad rockets cooked off in uneven timing, some launching a few yards before tearing apart, others detonating in place. Crates of 152mm shells didn't just explode, they fed each other, a rolling chain where heat and shock primed the next stack. With the generator dead and the radar silent, the fireball widened, the smoke column bent in the damp air, and the shockwaves began to do what radios could not. Break command links beyond the fence line and strip control from any unit still trying to push orders into the yard. The win came from timing, not the blast. Fog compressed the radar picture. The planned power dip cut tools, and spoofed tracks dragged eyes away. In that minute, a guarded depot became its own fuse as explosives primed explosives and the yard turned on itself. That's how layered defenses fail. Stacked routines line up, and a single push tips the whole set. Subscribe if you want the next breakdown. Ghost taxis that tow swarms, fog windows that hide approach paths, and the cheap drones now shaping Black Sea moves. 1 minute of clarity can erase a year of stockpiles. Watch what happens when it appears again.